to the Drop Bass Not Bombs podcast. I'm your host, Amy Farina, aka MC Unicorn, and welcome to season 2. So if you're new here, this is the podcast where I interview interesting people in the electronic music scene who are raving for a cause, partying for a purpose, and making the world a better place. I sit down with artists, industry professionals, content creators, and more. Just keep in mind on this podcast, we have a variety of different opinions and views that do not necessarily reflect those of my own or those of Drop Bass Not Bombs. We also talk a lot about really mature topics, so listener discretion and viewer discretion is advised. Before we jump into today's episode, a quick message from friends of the podcast and our sponsors. If you're looking for the perfect outfit for a big night out or for your next rave, look no further. When I'm looking for that festival fit, I go to RolitaCouture.com. So this shirt is from there. All their clothes are handmade in Las Vegas. They're comfortable, they're practical. Even the pants have pockets. They're my favorite rave festival fashion brand. You can use code MCUnicorn to save 15% off today at RolitaCouture.com. Click the link down below and save some money and look amazing this weekend because sexy has no size. Welcome back to the Drop Bass Not Bombs podcast. I'm joined today by Justin McGary. Justin is the host of the Underground Society podcast and the founder of the Underground Society agency. From a young age, Justin knew he was bound to be an entrepreneur, and now he's dedicated his career to helping people find their way in the electronic music industry. How are you, Justin?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you're from, and what do you do?
Yeah, so obviously, you guys know my name now, Justin. I am from a little small town in Northern California, in the United States, called Lodi. It's one of the major wine capitals of the world, next to Napa, as most people know. But yeah, my dad's a farmer. My mom's a hairdresser. I grew up loving music. My mom's a huge concert goer, and I always thought that the music industry was going to be like a pipe dream for me, and I never thought that I could be the one that actually could make a career for myself in this industry, and here we are going for it. So that's kind of where we are.
Nice. So did you grow up listening to electronic music, or what's your earliest electronic music memory?
I remember listening to Deadmau5 in like 5th, 6th grade, like early on, because a lot of my friends were talking about it and stuff. But as far as like being raised and like going to concerts and stuff with my mom, it was every genre besides electronic. So yeah, it's mainly just started. I think that's what really helped me like find my way with it. It was finally like something like music that I wasn't introduced to through my parents. It was like something that I discovered for myself, and I think that's why it became such a passion for me. So.
Nice. So how did you discover it on your own? Was it like from parties or YouTube,
yeah, it was
or from Deadmau5 in school?
Deadmau5 in school, yeah.
Okay, wow.
People talking about that. And then Skrillex was around kind of during that time as well. And then who else was, I'm trying to think of who else I was listening to. I mean, he's kind of canceled now, but Bass Nectar. Bass Nectar was around that time too. So all those early guys, I was just from my friends, we were sharing music and stuff, and it was kind of just what my friends are listening to. So I got turned on, which was kind of weird because I feel like even now EDM is still like kind of a smaller genre compared to most, and I feel like most high school kids listen to like rap or like hip hop or stuff like that. And I've never really been into that kind of style of music. So it was kind of interesting that I did find out just through my friends what electronic music was. And then from there, it just kind of took a life of its own, and I kind of started following who I like. So yeah.
Sounds like you had some good friends then.
yeah, absolutely. So it's I'm not friends with too many of them anymore, but yeah, I was surrounded by some cool kids growing up.
So then straight away, did you start going to raves in high school, or what did the trajectory look like from like, I'm just picturing you by the lockers talking about Deadmau5, and then did you go right to raving, or was there some steps in between?
No, definitely some steps in between. So I was just listening to music. I had always, from, like I said, 5th, 6th grade, I'd liked the music since then and was listening to more of it once I got to high school. And then I never really thought about like going to a rave or anything until one of my friends, I grew up a Christian. And I think that's a big reason why, just because there was so much negative stigma around it. And I didn't know the balance between like, you could be a Christian, but someone who also likes this kind of music and likes this type of, going to these type of events. I didn't know that there was a clear balance there. So one of my friends from church, who was actually the lead singer, or not the lead singer, lead guitarist of our youth group, and also the big, adult church. He went to a rave, and I thought, him of all people, how, like, why? Again, I didn't know the crossover there, so him of all people, I was like, dang, why? Like, how did that? Uh, how did he end up finding his way to a rave, and how is he the person kind of introducing me to it? And then one day he was just like, hey, you should go with me. I went, and I was like, that, you of all people, like, what? How? And then I thought about it, and I was at the gym, and talked to some other people there at the gym that I was friends with, that I trusted, and I was like, he just invited me to go to a rave. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Because I wasn't sure. I'd never gone. They're like, dude, raving's so much fun. You should definitely go. And then from that night, I had the time of my life. And then 2 weeks after that, I met, my original OG rave fan, which a lot of them don't even go to raves anymore, or festivals anymore. But all those people, that was the first time I met them. And then 2 weeks after that was my first festival. They were planning on going to a festival, and they're like, hey, we love Justin. You should go with us. And I was like, yeah, I'm having a great time here, so why not? So then 2 weeks after my first event was my first festival. So then, yeah, it's snowballed quickly after that.
Wow, that's really interesting. I can't say I've ever heard, I've had a lot of episodes in this podcast and asked a lot of people this question, but I never heard a story like that before. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, for
Yeah.
me, I got into electronic music through Dance Dance Revolution, which is actually a pretty
Yep.
standard way to, I'm hearing more
Mm-hmm.
and more, a lot of people got in through, and then also from early Euro dance, like Aqua and Eiffel 65. And I looked
Oh
past
yeah.
Barbie Girl and Blue and listened to the whole CD. And then, and now here I am today living in Europe. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So today, how has your music taste changed over time? So that first rave that you went to, do you remember what DJs you saw, or?
Honestly, no idea. The first festival though, some of the headlining acts were like Nero, Cruella played, some even, bass music artists, Sub Doctor, I saw in the lineup. There's a lot of bass artists that are like big now that were like early on in their career, because it was 7, 8 years ago when that first festival was. But yeah, my first rave, I honestly don't even remember who played. It was so last minute, and just kind of like, it was like, I'm pretty sure I got invited like the same day that the event was happening, so I had like zero time to like do any like prep work. I was just like, I'm just going and seeing what happens. So yeah.
I think that's even better though, because then you're just, thrown into it. You can't
Yeah.
prepare and can just go in and dive in head first. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like now things are too organized. Like now, you're looking at line, like I'm going to Ultra and I'm already like, I'm looking at like the times and the stages and like
Mm-hmm.
who is where. And I don't know. I think there's something special about just like showing up
Just
and
going.
not
Yeah.
knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you're from the Netherlands, but kind of out of country for me. But I would love to go to Belgium for Rampage and just go, or like Tomorrowland. It's a huge festival, and just be like, I'm not planning on seeing anyone in specific. Just go because I'm there and experience whatever it has for me.
You should do it. I never been to Rampage. I definitely want to. There's another event called Extrema Outdoor. That's like
Mm.
another like drum and bass one in Belgium.
Oh, I love drum
I
and bass, so
Yeah, you should go. I'm going to Tomorrowland this summer, so it'll be fun.
sick. That'll be a
Yeah,
blast. I
yeah.
one
It's
of my
not that far
buddies,
from me, so.
one of my buddies went last year, and he had at the time of his life, he wants everyone to go with him now. So definitely on my bucket list.
Awesome. So you mentioned drum and bass. If you can name
Yep.
three DJs to describe your music taste, who would they be?
Holy shit, that's hard. I like a plethora. Yeah, going back to your original question of how has my music taste changed over time. Uh, when I grew up, I was listening to, my parents met in a country bar, like country music bar. I loved classic rock growing up, Christian rock, R&B, everything. So I still appreciate those genres, but I primarily listen to all electronic music now. But within electronic music, I say drum and bass, progressive house, trance, dubstep is like the niche that I primarily like work in. A lot of the artists I'm sure we'll get into this, but the artists that I manage, the couple guys that I manage, they're in the bass music scene. So, but personally listening and enjoying music, I like almost everything. I like techno. I like all the different genres. So I'm not like one specific, like I'm not a bass head. I wouldn't consider myself a bass head. I wouldn't consider myself like a diehard drum and bass fan, or like anything like that. But yeah, I like everything. So it definitely has evolved over time. Top three DJs, I gotta say Subtronics would be one of them. Um, I'm gonna try and pick other ones. Cascade and Deadmau5, their KX5 project is probably one of my newer favorites. Who else? And I'll go with, Dang, that's a hard one. I'm trying to choose a drum and bass person. I'll just say Sub Focus for drum and bass.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of drum and bass events here in Europe. Actually, there's a big one in
It's huge
the
over
Czech
there.
Republic too. Let It Roll. That one looks really
Mm-hmm.
cool too. Trying to think. I don't think I've been to any big. I've been to some smaller drum and bass events here because there's one. I try not to swear on the podcast, so I won't say the name. I try not to say certain words on the podcast, but it's Neuro and then FUCK. That's the
Got
name
it.
of the party. And yeah, they do parties at a club I used to work at in The Hague, and they're drum and bass, so that's pretty cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to any like big ones here, but you can swear, by the way. I just like my parents, like I try to,
Got it.
certain words are okay, and then other words like okay. But
Got it.
yeah,
Got it.
you should definitely come here for some of the big drum and bass parties for
I would
sure.
love to. Yeah, once I get a little bit further in my career and I can afford to travel a little bit more, I'd love to come out to some of the drum and bass. I know drum and bass is huge over there, so and it's starting to kind of get a name for itself in the States. So some of the and bass music is huge over here. So some of like the dubstep artists and stuff do kind of have like a crossover. They'll make a drum and bass track here and there. But as far as like, and there are like Sub Focus plays over here and stuff, and like EDC and whatnot, big shows. But I know the scene for drum and bass and like hard dance and stuff like that is way bigger and outside of the US. So I would love to experience stuff like that.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, for me, like, well, I think you and everybody else knows this about me, but I've come from the hard dance scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like my heart beats at 200 BPM, and yeah, I like as a big smile comes on my face when you were listing the genres. I'm like waiting to hear you say like hard style or
hard style. I actually do like hard style. I wouldn't say
okay.
it would be a top genre though.
Okay,
I
okay.
like anime. Lil
Oh,
Texas,
she's
obviously.
great.
He's yeah. Who else is in there? There's some other like smaller guys that just friends of mine, my friends of mine manage. I don't know if you know Dubstep FBI.
Yeah, I've tried to get
Yeah,
them on the
yeah,
podcast. I've also tried to get Lil Texas on the podcast. So if you guys are
yeah,
listening, I will see Lil Texas at Ultra. So I was thinking about being like, hey, remember me?
yeah, yeah. The Dubstep FBI girls are good friends of mine, and they manage. They're involved in the hard dance scene. They had 3 guys just play Wasteland, so I followed their artists too. But hardstyle, it's a new liking for me. I didn't like it up to like a couple years ago.
I think for a lot of people, it's an acquired taste, and it's
Yeah.
one you either like love it or you hate it. I think
Yep.
I didn't come out of the womb and just start listening to hardstyle either. Like although a lot of the sounds in Dance Dance Revolution are probably considered like nightcore and jump style and things like that. I mean, obviously I went the mainstream EDM route first. So, I listened to, I'm 32. So when I first started raving, it was like 2009 when I was 18. So at that time it was like all about Cosmic Gate and Avicii and Nicky Romero and Alesso and those kind of guys. And yeah, like the boo boo doo 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 that kind of EDM.
The
And
mainstream EDM.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tsunami, and then later on
Yeah.
Martin Garrix's Animals, and yeah, of course. And then I've always loved trance as well. And then got really deep into hard dance, and now like mostly.
Have you ever did you ever get to see Avicii back in the day?
Yeah, I did. I got to see him a lot.
Never got that opportunity. I wish I did. I love Avicii's music.
Yeah, I'm actually really, 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 really lucky that I went to college in Washington, D.C. and I actually saw him like way back, like 2009, 2010 at a really small club called Lima, like before he was famous. And then he blew up. And then that was like 2010. And then I remember 2012, we went to go see him at another club and it was like $60 and we waited in line for like 2 hours. Like it all changed within a matter of a year or two. Like no one knew who he was playing like on a Thursday night. And then all of a sudden it's like, we have to pay $60. We just saw him like.
Now he's the biggest in the world.
Yeah. My roommate in college had a crush on him. Sorry if she's listening, but she had a big crush on him. But yeah.
Hey, he's an attractive guy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, may you rest in peace. And yeah, I am really lucky to have had those experiences, like the 2010s. You hear a lot as like the golden age of, that's what I say, of EDM, and yeah, there's a lot of, it was an interesting time in the US for EDM because it wasn't so popular as it is now. And you could see these big, like I also saw Cosmic Gate at a pretty small club, Steve Angelo, like, yeah. And then
some of those trance guys, I mean, they do play huge festivals and stuff, but I just saw, do you know who Sultan Shepherd is?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just saw them in San Francisco 2 days ago. And they didn't play like a huge club. Like when the dubstep acts come to town, I don't know if it's just because dubstep's bigger now in the US or that when the dubstep acts come to town, they choose some of the bigger venues in our area. And when the trance guys come, I've never been to like I guess trance tour. And like any like huge club or big venue or anything, it's always in like smaller clubs, like intimate settings and stuff. So it's interesting like how the times have changed from trance being like trance and uh house and stuff being like the top like leading genres, like the OG genres, and now the crowds are smaller for them, and now they're bigger for dubstep. It's weird how the times have changed since then.
Why do you think that is?
Oh man, I just don't. I think for our generation, I think the dubstep scene and stuff is similar to like the rock and roll scene because it does have some similarity there. A lot of like Sullivan King or like Sudden Death or just like guys like that. A lot of their or even Excision, like a lot of their sound design and stuff reminds me of like our generation's like rock, I guess, rock and roll. So and then like with trance and stuff, it's I don't know unless you're like in you've been listening to EDM since like 2010, it's not as like publicized. It's not, I don't know, it's just not as like big of a genre anymore. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, so I didn't mean to put you on the
Yeah,
spot. I
yeah,
was
you're
just
good.
wondering what your thoughts
I
were
think
first.
I think it's like dubstep is like our generation's like rock and roll. I think it's because rock acts aren't there's not a huge that's not a huge genre anymore, like it was back in the 80s. So I think it's our generation's like our parents and our parents were growing up and stuff. They're huge in like the hair bands, 70s, 80s rock bands. I think dubstep is like our generation's version of that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then I think when you have people like Skrillex, so when I was in college too, I remember discovering Skrillex, Scary Monsters, and Nice Sprites for the first time. Same roommate who had a crush on Avicii found the song,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "What is this music? It's like it's crazy, it's so weird." And then we got really into Flux Pavilion and Dr. P and Smash Gordon. Again, this is like
Yeah.
2009, 2010. And yeah, I think with dubstep, you had these artists like Skrillex, for example, or Major Lazer that were able to
Mm-hmm.
like make it kind of mainstream to like, okay, we all know Bangarang and like a couple of songs. And then it's still counterculture enough, like you said, with rock and roll. And then of course, like you have like Sudden Death, which is, like very dark and crazy
Arrow.
visual.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's how it became how it is because
Yeah.
it is crazy popular. And I'm trying to think like back in the day, like when I always saw those artists that I mentioned, they were at even smaller venues, like, or there
Yeah.
was not
It's
as
flipped
big. Yeah.
now.
Flip. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think about that before. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
then
really interesting.
I think it's interesting too. You brought up Skrillex, like he doesn't even really like his couple new albums, like that's not dubstep. He was like one of the pioneers that brought it mainstream, and now he's like working on like more like trappier, like almost Sable Valleys type of stuff. So it's interesting how his producing style has changed over time. And he's super talented anyways, but he can make anything, I'm sure, at this point. But I think it's interesting how Skrillex, one of the pioneers of like the dubstep genre, doesn't even produce like dubstep anymore.
Yeah. It is great. And the dubstep sound has changed too. Like
Oh yeah.
like when I listened to dubstep in college, like I said, it's really different than it now. And it's not to say I don't like dubstep now. I do. I just don't really find myself. For example, like I was at EDC Orlando and I
Mm.
did spend some time at Sudden Death and Sullivan King. And like it's fine. I like it, but like it's not I'm not like I'm not a bass head, and maybe I would have
Yeah.
called myself a bass head in like 2011. I actually did. I think I did have like a bass head shirt. So I think it's yeah. I think the sound has changed, and then also like I said, I got really into hard dance, and now like
Yeah.
that's more my thing. But yeah, it's really interesting how things change over time for sure.
Definitely. Definitely.
So, getting back into your story, I want to backtrack a little bit. So,
Hmm.
you have a background in the fitness world. I've learned
Yes.
from your podcast and your social media. So, you did bodybuilding. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you went from doing that to what you do now in the electronic music industry?
Yeah, so I guess just to start, my mom's side of the family, not so much my dad's side, but my mom's side, my mom's brother used to compete in bodybuilding when he was younger as well, in like his teenage and young adult years. And now he sells workout equipment. So that's what he's like still in the fitness industry for his career. And my mom's always been fit. My stepdad's a, police officer, and fitness has always been, going playing sports growing up and, working out. I see just they set good examples for me of how to live a healthy lifestyle. And I took that once I, started working out for myself and like how do I think I was like 14 or 15 when I was like, I should probably start working out and like I should make this like a more staple part of my life. I just fell in love with, my body composition changing and seeing myself progress and stuff like that. And so I was like, you know what? And then during that time too, NPC or IFBB, which is the league that I competed in, or if anyone is aware of like the Olympia bodybuilding is like the world famous bodybuilding competition that's ran by the IFBB. So I competed in that league, and they just when I started working out seriously, and I think I was like a couple years in, they came out with a new division called men's physique. So instead of the big bodybuilders with like the speedos basically on stage, it's more of like the handsome look with like board shorts and like your appearance matters, not so much your size, and like more of like your symmetry and like how peeled or how in shape you are, how lean you are, and so that division came out, and I had seen myself start progressing, and then I got to the point of I was like, hey, I think I might actually be able to do this if I dieted correctly and like actually did prep. And like so for 4 years there, I got really into competing. One I got like second. I got in like the top three for like all of my shows. I competed in 5 or 6, and then my last show I got first place. And that was basically I knew it. I knew bodybuilding wasn't going to be like a long term thing, but it was just kind of like I was done playing sports in high school, and I haven't really. And it was in between like playing sports in high school and finishing that, and like trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a living. And it was just that kind of like that time gap there, that I feel I chose to fill with bodybuilding. And I'm so glad that I did, because there's so many things that I take from bodybuilding and that I apply now to my entrepreneurial route. So yeah, it was a fun time.
I can imagine that takes a lot of discipline. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what other than discipline, I suppose, like what lessons did you learn from that process? I mean, it sounds really, I mean, I go to the gym 4 times a week and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's enough. I
That's
do
what
like
that's what I do.
step and X core, those kind of classes. So I can't
That
imagine
I
being a
lift
bodybuilder.
I lift like 4 days a week now too. I don't take dieting as quite as seriously, but I keep myself in shape. That's why I started going to the gym in the first place. So I just kind of went back to that. But as far as lessons, I would say some of the main ones just like really it taught me how to truly believe in myself and like put everything on the line for something that you want to, a dream that you want to make happen. I when I was competing, I was working at a grocery store, minimum wage job, part time, and I took every cent that I had and I saved up for months for every show. Competing in bodybuilding is expensive. You have you have to you have to be basically licensed to compete. You have to pay for your licensing fee. You have to pay for basically each show, especially if it's out of city and you have to get a hotel. You can expect. I mean, it's I think it's probably at least around the same price as like a festival. So you're paying a couple $1,000s per show for you just compete, just for you to partake. So every penny that I made that I didn't have to pay bills with for months, I would save up for these shows just so I can compete. And it taught me how to basically live on close to nothing to use all of your funding that you're making at your day job and put it into growing something that you want. So I think that was one of the main lessons that I learned is just how to like take a risk and put everything on the line for something that you truly, want to make happen.
Oh, I had no idea you had to pay to what can you elaborate a little bit more on the license? What do you mean by a license? I don't know
Yeah,
anything about
so
this, so I'm curious.
depending on the league that I competed in, you have to pay. I think it's like $300 a year. Basically, it's just a payment to be a part of like they basically like turn it into like it's almost kind of like a club almost. You have to pay for the register. It's called a registration card, so you have to pay for the registration. It's kind of like driving a car. You have to pay for the registration to be able to legally drive your car. So to be able to compete in the league, you have to pay. I think I want to say like $300 or $400 a year, to compete in that league.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
need to pay to join a gym, have a trainer, and then
Yeah.
all the health food
Yeah. And
is
then,
like more expensive than normal
yep.
food.
Yeah. And I mean, in your off season, I was eating 6,000 calories a day when I'm trying to put on size in my off season because I'm a skinnier guy and I needed to put on muscle. So my coach had me on like 6,000 calories in the off season. So I was eating a lot for one. And then for two, paying my coach, that's like, I think that was like $300 or $400 by itself a month as well. Plus the shows are a couple thousand. So it's just all of that combined. It's expensive.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot, but it sounds like you got a lot out of it. And like you said, these are
Definitely.
lessons you can apply today. And then yeah, you learn from that. I feel that way. I never did anything to that level, but I did
Hmm.
used to do gymnastics and karate. And I do feel like from those sports, I did learn a lot of like
Hey, karate
responsibility.
gang. I used to do that too. When I was a
Yeah,
kid, I
I
used to
love
do
I
karate.
loved karate. I tell my parents like out of all the things I did, like karate. I mean, I love gymnastics. That
Hmm.
was my sport, but karate, just like I learned so much from it. I just feel like I just learned so much discipline and
Yep.
respect and just like showing up on time and like
You
it
learn how to
just was
become a better
awesome.
person.
Yeah, and it was awesome like
Yeah.
using nunchucks and ninja
Yeah.
stars
Yeah. Yeah.
and also safety. You learn a lot of safety,
Hmm.
self-defense, like yeah, I learned how to be a better person. I have really fond memories of karate and I recommend that for everybody to do some
Yeah.
form of like martial arts. It's so much fun.
When I have kids, I'll probably put them in karate or some form of sport like that. Cause that was another going back. I don't even really think about that much anymore until you said it. But yeah, I used to do karate as well. I did karate I was almost a black belt actually. I was like one belt away. I did it for like 10 years growing up. That was like my child's like early childhood sport.
Yeah, same. I think I got to like a junior black belt or something like that.
Hmm.
Like I did it from when I was like 3 or 4 until I don't
Yep.
know, probably like 11. Yeah, same thing, like younger,
Yep.
yeah, younger age. And I just remember it was so fun. Like I enjoyed going there every week, and
Hmm.
yeah, and it was just cool. And like I would have my nunchucks, and like I don't know, it just
And
I was a
making the
bad
friends that
bitch,
you
you know.
make through that. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, good friends, and yeah, it was really awesome. And yeah, I just feel like a lot of the stuff that I learned from there, I can just apply to every day, and from
Mhm.
gymnastics as well, and any kind of sport, like especially when you're on a team, like working together as a team, and like showing up on time, and like responsibility, and looking out for others, and that's all really important skills to have in the workplace.
Absolutely. Yeah. So many things it's weird to think, and see as an adult looking back that like the lessons that you learn from sports or from friends or from certain things that happen to your family that it all makes you a who you are today, and b like it's crazy how many lessons you learn as a kid that as an adult they show up and you're like, oh, I'm glad I did that, or oh, I'm glad I learned that, or I'm glad I went through that experience.
Definitely. I have that a lot, like things from the past, like, oh, I'm really glad I did that, or I'm really glad I
Yeah.
didn't do that. And yeah, it's crazy now to be older and to have like that retrospective
Hmm.
view of it for sure. So looking today, so you say you still go to the gym, but what role does fitness play in your life today?
Oh my gosh, such a big role. For a while there, after I finished competing, and there was a couple years there where I bringing this back to my dad being a farmer. I went to work full time after high school for him, thinking that's what the path that I wanted to take. 'Cause that's what my dad did. And a lot of sons, kind of a common thing. There's sons do what their dads did for a living or whatever. And I was kind of thinking that I was going to be following along that same path. But during that time, because farming is such a I was working 60 hours a week plus when I was working for my dad, and it was hard to have fitness in my life. But since then, and since I moved away from that and more into the music industry, I've made it such a big part of my life again, and it helps not only like I feel better. I can move around a lot better. Sitting at a desk all day, running this podcast or management stuff or whatever. I've sitting behind screens a lot. We all do. I think it's just good to move your body, and I do it for more health reasons now. I don't really have any like physical goals anymore. I don't ever really want to compete again. So it's really just it keeps me not only physically healthy, but my thing is it keeps me mentally healthy. The endorphins that you get after your workout and just how good, and I typically work out in the morning too. So the difference that it makes in my day on the days that I work out versus the days that I don't, it makes such a big difference with my focus, my mental clarity, all that kind of stuff. So I highly suggest anyone who isn't working out, even if need to lose weight, whatever your goals are, at least go for the mental side of it, because it helps your mental so much.
And there's so many different forms too. Like I also
Yeah.
really like yoga. Like you can go for a walk. Like you can lift.
Yep.
Like you could do a class. Like just movement in general is really
And
important. I think yeah,
all of those, and yeah, that's why I said, not only physically, because it depends on what your goals are, but and that kind of deciphers what you end up doing for your exercise. But all of those, I think, in yoga, weightlifting, even going on a walk, all of those benefit your mental health. So I'm a huge proponent of that.
Yeah, me too. And I think we saw that with the pandemic too, when the gyms were closed
Mm-hmm.
or, when there were stay-at-home orders and you couldn't, depending on where you were, obviously it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
different,
yeah,
but
yeah.
just generally speaking, it was more difficult to exercise, at least for in my case. And
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to do like the at-home workout videos and like I need to be out and so I think that time really showed us too like the importance of movement and yeah, just sitting all day, whether you're sitting around working or sitting playing
Mm-hmm.
Netflix, it's watching Netflix playing video games, it's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, no. And we have to, I mean, especially for jobs and stuff. I understand with the new age technology, a lot of people are sitting behind screens and it is what it is. But do anything you can to counterbalance that. Even, I mean, even with talking about like, and I don't even have a pair of these yet. I need to get some, but I want to get blue light glasses, protect my eyes because I'm sitting behind screens so much. And, when I go to shows, I'm always wearing hearing protections. Like whatever you can do to benefit like the longevity of your life, and exercise is one of those things that if you start making that a habit at a young age, you will live so much longer and you will live such a healthier life. So
Definitely. Yeah, with the
yeah.
hearing protection, that's something I found out a bit too late. It was not as like hip as it is now. I think I started
Yeah.
wearing earplugs about 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I've been raving for like 13 years and like it was not a thing, like did not really see people in the early
Mm-hmm.
2000s wearing them. Didn't even know about like I didn't even think to wear them. And we were like dancing on the speaker, dancing so close to the speaker. And I don't know if it's done any serious damage, probably
We'll
some,
find
but
out.
now I'll find out soon. But yeah, I do wear earplugs now, but I think everything you said is really good advice. It's just about
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, whether that's at a rave or just in your daily life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what kind of music do you listen to at the gym? Is it drum and bass?
Honestly, so I have a workout partner, at least now. My roommate and I work out together. We just honestly listen to whatever they have on at the gym. A lot of days they'll have rock on. They'll have, that like we were talking about the EDM, like 2000 EDM, like throwback EDM tunes
Ooh,
or
nice.
pop or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if I'm working out by myself, honestly, I either listen to like classic rock or I listen to like some form of like hard style, something more aggressive, or even drum and bass or dubstep. So definitely something more aggressive.
Nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mostly do classes. Actually, I only do classes now at the gym,
Yeah.
but because I'm in the Netherlands, it's a lot of hard style, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then also like yeah, EDM, of course, like Melbourne Bounce,
Yeah.
some dubstep too, in some of the classes. We are really lucky here in the Netherlands that electronic music is so embedded in the culture. Like you hear it at
Huge.
the grocery
Yeah.
store, like you're at the gym. So
Yep.
that's one of my favorite things about living
I'm
here. It's so
I'm
common.
I'm hoping that we hit a point like that in the States where it becomes like more mainstream. I
Do you think
really
it's
wish.
possible?
I think so. I think with the trajectory, I mean, if you even just look at like the festivals that we have, I think compared to like Rolling Loud or like the Warp Tour, Vans Warp Tour, anything like that, I think, I mean, with Insomniac and Excision now, and just talking just in the States, Excision's festivals now, there's everything we have, and Disco Donnie, everyone. Like, I think our festivals, like, we sell, I think we sell out the most events and we have the biggest festivals, so that being one of them, and then also just like how many people as I get older, how many people that I'm around that are like, oh yeah, I listen to EDM, oh yeah, I listen to EDM. I think it's like just becoming a more mainstream thing slowly over time. So I think if we continue on this trajectory, it'll definitely happen eventually.
And then you have a lot of pop artists also like dabbling in EDM, like
Yeah.
Beyonce, Madonna, was it Drake too? I don't know. I
Drake's
don't
whole
know much about
album.
pop. Okay, well
Yeah,
there you
yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that should bring it a bit more in the mainstream. And yeah, the
Hmm.
festivals in the US are massive. I mean, EDC is huge. Like the EDC, Insomniac in general, the
Yeah.
franchise company is huge.
Yep. And yeah, and them, I mean, they're probably the leaders, but them and then just all the top artists that are, trying to um foster the new generation of people trying to producers trying to get into the industry and stuff like that, like Excision. He has a whole label for that now, Subsidia. Above and Beyond, they've always tried to push new and upcoming artists. I think with the that being a trend too that I'm starting to see with the bigger artists helping the new age people, the next generation. I think that's going to help it grow as well. So I think there's a lot of factors that are helping just the trajectory of the growth of the EDM becoming more mainstream. And I'm so excited for that to happen because I think everything has its time, right? We're going back to, we were talking about like 80s rock and whatnot, but in our parents' age, like that was their music back then. And then 90s kind of moved into hip hop rap, which is still kind of still around today, as I would say that it's probably like mainstream in the States is like our biggest genre. But I think in the next 20 years, it's gonna flip and EDM is gonna be on top. So I'm
That would be
I'm hoping
great.
for that. That'd be awesome.
I think that would be great for both of us, for both of
Yeah.
us, and what we
Yes.
do is it
Yes.
has been, for me, electronic music has always been a side hustle. It's always been something I do
Hmm.
on the side because it is hard to make a lot of money
Yeah.
working in the rave scene. It's not to say that you can't, obviously people do, but it can be challenging. So I
Hmm.
think as electronic music becomes more mainstream and there are more opportunities, then yeah, it's going to be easier, I think.
Yeah. Make us money.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, you have just, to play devil's advocate, you have the people that say, rave music, electronic music is underground. It's supposed to be underground. We don't want to hear it on
There is
Budweiser
that
commercials.
argument.
You don't want
Yes.
to see it at the Super Bowl. Like, you don't want to
Hmm.
hear it when you're at the grocery store. But like in the Netherlands, you do, and everybody seems to be okay with that because it exists. It coexists at the same time as the underground. So, you're in the
Yeah.
grocery store and you hear a Hardwell song or even some mainstream hardstyle you hear at the grocery store here. And then you can go to your underground techno rave, in the middle of the field. Like you can still
That
have both.
that's kind of happening, I think. And a good artist to bring up that is done that very well is Alenium. Is some of his popular songs, not everything that he produces and not every song on every album, but some of his like bigger hits and like that are more pop kind of crossover. I have heard in the grocery store. I have heard in the mall. I have heard. So it's like there is some artists that I've heard, but yeah, like heavier stuff like Excision or like drum and bass or even hardstyle. Like I never hear that stuff in public.
Yeah, in the US, not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think it's gonna take a while. We've talked about that a lot in this podcast. Like if hardstyle is ever gonna be like me, mainstream enough
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
US.
yeah.
That I don't know, but like that I would be a bit more hesitant to see just because of the nature of it. But obviously, like the big room mainstream EDM.
Hmm.
Like I could totally that it is already being played on the radio and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you
And
do
Marshmallow
hear
gets
like
played
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
marshmallow.
Yeah.
I've seen marshmallow Halloween costumes. I was
Hmm.
in the U.S. around Halloween, and I've seen them at Spirit
Yeah.
Halloween. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's starting to get there. But yeah, I mean, Marshmallow, he's done so much stuff with the rap scene. He's done so much stuff in the pop scene. He's collab with Selena Gomez. So like he's on a completely different level anyways. But
yeah, and there is a lot of overlap between electronic music and pop, like we said before
yeah.
too. Like Madonna did stuff with Avicii, and then
Hmm.
like there's just a lot of crossover. And yeah, I think a lot of pop artists see that like there is a niche for it, and there is money
Hmm.
in it. There's a market for it, and like these big festivals too are fun. And then you have people like Shaq too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I heard recently on a podcast like he was comparing it to playing basketball. Like he loves. I don't know if
Yeah.
he. I don't want to misquote him. I don't want to say that he said he loves DJing as much as basketball. Like I don't want to misquote him. I think the quote was along the lines of like it felt like Game 7 of some kind of
Mm.
championship or something. I don't want to misquote him,
It,
but
it fires him up similarly as how basketball did for him.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what was said.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
I think that's really cool. And yeah, when you have like big celebrities, big people like getting into
I know
DJing and
I know people who have recently that I've met recently that have gotten into EDM recently because of Shaq. So
oh, that's cool.
yeah, so he's opening doors to new ears too. So like people like that, I'm super appreciative for.
Anytime there's intersectionality, I think that's a good
Hmm.
like it's a good thing. And there is a lot of intersectionality bringing it back to fitness between fitness and electronic music because
Talking about
I
hardstyle,
yeah.
especially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because of the
hardstyle.
cadence of,
Hmm.
you got to get your heart beating at 140 and that heart style tracks
For
140.
for anyone who is a fitness kind of guru, or not, I wouldn't even call myself a guru, but just a fitness fan has been in the game at all in the last 10-15 years. There used to be a guy who was famous, a famous influencer by the name of Z's, and he basically was I would call him the very first crossover between hardstyle and fitness. And all of his YouTube videos and all of his posing videos, all that kind of stuff, he would always use hardstyle music. So a lot of the people who are in the fitness industry came over to dance music because I know so many people in the fitness industry who go to raves and festivals now, and I think he was like one of the first pioneers that like crossed over the fitness industry into like the hard style stuff. So and since then, people even now still he unfortunately died, but people still bring up his name and still kind of say who he was, the first person who brought all of us to hardstyle.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to hear stories like that. I have heard of him before. I think from the
Hmm.
I'm Peaking podcast, I think
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about him before. And they have also had other fitness people who, yeah, who love hardstyle. And I
yeah,
think it's just great music to work out to. Like we said, it's about trying to get your beats per minute to match that, but also it's just like it's motivating. It's like you can't like you're not
yeah.
gonna just like
Get your
sit
blood
there, like you
flowing.
want to do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
It gets you going. So yeah, I'm always looking for intersectionality and things. And also with video games too. A lot of people have come,
yes,
like I
Monster
said, from
Cat.
my story with Dance Dance Revolution, but also other video games too, and anime. I mean, there's just crossover
Hmm.
in so many different genres.
Yep, and yeah, and I noticed uh uh or you just brought up what repeat what you just said. I'm sorry. It
With
caused
anime,
something. Anime, yes,
yeah.
or like video games. Monster
Mhm.
Cat, they do Rocket League, and like a lot of the artists that I know about have had songs in Rocket League or in top video games now. So that's been cool to see too, as a crossover and not only anime but in video games.
Yeah, we're taking over, taking over. And
Yeah.
bringing it back. So when I was first doing some research about you, I saw that one of the main reasons you wanted to work in the electronic music scene is that you wanted this music on the radio, and you made that clear. Like you
Yeah.
want this to
Yep.
be mainstream, you want this on the radio. So I want to transition now, talk a little bit about how that relates to the Underground Society podcast. So how did you get that podcast started, and what's one thing you wish you knew about podcasting before you started one?
Oh boy, that great questions. So it started. Yeah, I originally wanted it to be an FM radio station. I saw that there, at least in my area, there was no FM stations for EDM, and I was like, growing up listening to all the other different genres of music, I was like, what? How come there's no radio? Why can't I listen to this when I'm driving in my car, other than like through my phone? And so I was like, that'd be a cool business. And both my parents are entrepreneurs, so I was just like, that'd be a cool like business idea for me, to get my foot in the door, because there's obviously a need there probably. So obviously good entrepreneurs find a need and fill it. That's the kind of the game plan of any entrepreneur. And then I started working with a life coach and my mentor, who has over, I think, close to 15 years in the music industry. He's worked for Capitol Records and Icon Collective. um, met with him, and he kind of pushed me in the direction. He was like, I told him, as we were talking and stuff, I told him about this idea of like, I really have this idea of like, I think an FM station for EDM would be super cool, and like bring people in for interviews. And a big part of why I wanted to start that was not only to listen to the music, but also be able to interview people through the radio station. And he was like, for one, and with his experience, he's like, for one, getting a radio station started with all the equipment and stuff, that's a lot of money. And that was a couple of years ago, so I was like 19 at the time or something, or I was probably older than that. I was probably like 21, but not old enough and not enough funds to be able to start something like that on my own. He was like, well, what can we do? And then we came to the conclusion of starting a podcast. It's like, okay, that still gives me, like, I can still share music through that, and then it's kind of checking both those boxes without having like a huge financial burden of starting a radio station. And then I started it. He gave me 1 month to get going on it. He kind of challenged me. He was like, let's get your first episode up in a month. I had no experience, zero experience. I didn't even have a mic. I didn't have anything. And I got everything together in my first episode out in a month. And then from there,
Wow.
it's just weekly consistency since then. So I've missed a week here and there, or taken a week off here and there for holidays or whatever it may be, or if I was out of town or whatnot. But pretty much been consistent for the last 3 years, or going on 3 years now. But I think your other question of what do you think I didn't know about podcasts that I wish I knew. I wasn't super clear on who I wanted to, what audience I wanted to serve, and how and what the best way to serve them was, until I started doing it, until it kind of like started to happen on its own. Because originally I was just like, talk to cool people in the EDM industry. And now it's turned into, okay, who am I actually like, who do I want to benefit from hearing this episode? Why am I talking, like, what value am I bringing to an audience? And I really, I figured out, there's so many people who have podcasts that are for the fans of for the fans of EDM, for the, for like dubstep FPI, they're fans of dubstep, or I'm Peaking, it's like the influencers, or that kind of world. And I wanted to kind of bridge the gap. I saw that there was, again, back to finding a need and filling it. I was like, what need? Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. What is a deeper need that people are looking for that it isn't around yet? And that was when I discovered, I really want my show to benefit the people who are wanting to build a career of their own in the music industry. As I'm building and, discovering, this path for myself, how can I help others do the same and become successful on their own? So that's kind of, I guess the one thing that I didn't know is how to position my show and who I even that really the reason of why you even need to narrow down and niche down and make sure you find your correct target market. I had no idea what that even looked like when I started. So
I mean, that's really hard to do because obviously you
yeah,
want everybody to listen to it. You
right,
want the
yeah,
maximum amount of listeners
yep.
and followers and subscribers.
But it's just not. But like looking at it that way, it's just not realistic. Like you kind of, especially in the early days, you have to niche down. Anyone who's successful is going to tell you you have to niche down. And I'm so glad that I did because I didn't know that I was passionate about this, but I'm so passionate about helping, and starting my management. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but starting management, stuff like that. I have a passion for helping people achieve their dreams and their goals, and having a part in or having a hand in making that happen and helping other people make that happen for their own lives and seeing that happen for them. It's nothing else. I mean, even looking back at the fitness journey and stuff like that, like nothing has fired me up like this in my life before. So I'm very passionate about all of it.
Yeah. And I feel like with your podcast, I mean, the stories are really inspiring.
Yeah.
One of my favorite episodes is where you interviewed Sunflower Raver. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about reaching out to her after I was following her on Instagram, but I didn't really know much about her. And then I heard her story and heard the questions you asked her. And that was definitely one of my favorite episodes from you. And like,
thank you.
that blew me away, that interview. And yeah, I think your stories really inspire people and you dive deep and I like your interview style. And I think too, it's kind of like networking. Like I feel like I'm networking when I listen, like, even though I'm not there in the conversation, it's like, oh, I'm like,
that's the goal.
learning. Okay. Well, okay. Well, then you did that.
I want to hear the people that I bring on, especially like people like Sunflower Raver, who has a huge following. I want to be able to provide a platform to humanize them. A lot of people, they see famous people and they're like, oh, they're on such a high level. And a lot of people pedestal like famous people, but it's like, they're just another person. They just stuck with their dream and made their dream possible because they stuck with it. Like it's the only difference between a lot of people that are alive today and them is, and a lot of people, I guess, pedestal or put them on a pedestal, but I like to provide a platform to bring them off of that pedestal for a lot of people and humanize them and be like, look, they've gone through struggles themselves. They've had their own set of trials, and it kind of make them a little bit more relatable to like the people who, I guess, put them or view them in such high regard.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about podcasts is you can dive deep. Like you can dive way deeper on a podcast, having a conversation with someone than you can like just looking at their Instagram. Like in the example of Sunflower Raver, like I followed her because I also do rave content. She came up on my feed, of course, like she's very popular, like her outfits, but I had no idea everything that she went through in her story. And I learned that from your podcast, so I think that's great. When you go about looking for guests, how do you find a balance between people you want to talk to, like you said, talking to cool people, and then people that your audience wants to hear? Because that's something I struggle with too, like finding a balance between, I can't just have all my friends on the podcast. I need to, have a diversity of guests.
Well, diversity, how I do diversity. I honestly, I stand behind, like, even like as a producer or anything like that. A lot of people are like, I make what I like, and whoever likes if I like it, there's got to be other people who like it. So that should be, your fan base. Just do whatever you're passionate about, and let the fans come and who think, if you think it's cool, there's got to be other people who think it's cool. So just keep doing what you like. That's for one. Two, for my show, I try and it's not just a producer show. It's not just an industry people show. It's not just an influencer show. It's in every facet. If you want to be in the EDM industry, no matter what you're interested in doing, even becoming a photographer, I want to provide a place I want to interview people who are professionals in each facet of the industry, so that people can, if you're a photographer, I want you to be able to come to the Underground Society podcast and be like, okay, this, the last episode was a manager, the last episode was an artist. Let's dig back a little bit. Oh, here's a photographer. Like, I want to provide at least one episode for everyone who wants to be in the industry, not just like if I just interviewed, artists, that would be almost a disservice to people who want to be in the industry, who are photographers or who want to be in the industry and they're influencer and they want to be an influencer, something like that. So that's, I guess, how I put together my diversity is just like picking people not sporadically, because I don't really have a system, but picking enough people and keeping about enough of a balance between all of the different career paths within the EDM industry.
Are there any industries or any guests, any people that you haven't tackled yet? Any professions you haven't got to that you want to? Because I know you have photographers, content creators, artists, event organizers.
People. Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point, I think I've checked every box, but I think my focus kind of shifts over time too, because I'll notice like I'll get into a rut of like, okay, I've had like the last 3 months, I've had nothing but artists on. Let's switch this up. Kind of the end of last year was kind of like that, and right now I'm going through a period of time where I'm having podcast hosts on, or I'm having event promoters or agents and managers, and I'm kind of taking more of a business route this month and going into next month. So it's kind of just kind of balance itself out over time. It's just hard to focus on like it's been hard for me to focus on like getting business people and like getting artists on, or getting a more of a better mix, and I'm trying to work on that. But I think, to answer your question, I think I have touched on every facet of the industry so far. So it has been, I mean, I'm going into my 3rd year, so it's been a few years.
Yeah, and if you're putting out episodes every week, then you probably hit every industry or every sector, every profession. So I mean that's really cool. Then you can just keep going deeper and deeper into those topics.
Yeah, and the more I find that the more that I talk to artists, I find out different struggles from them that they're going through, that I can dive deeper into the next conversation I have with the next artist. And same thing with photographers. I learn more about their struggles, which help me better prepare for the next photographer that I interview. So it's kind of just like you said, it kind of goes deeper every time. And I try and make things relatable still, try not to and try and make the guest feel comfortable, because you really can only go so deep sometimes depending on how well you know the person. But it's definitely a balancing act.
Yeah, it takes a lot of balance, but you do a good job. So just keep it up. And so how is your personal interview style, or how have you changed since you started the podcast?
Oh my gosh, interview style has changed tremendously. I remember my first couple interviews, I was reading off a script the whole time. It felt very robotic, and I was doing my best. It's what my talents were at the time. But since then, I've learned how to let the conversation flow, and kind of learn how tangents work in conversations. It's made me a much better like conversationalist, I guess. And like, I don't know, you probably have experienced the same thing as an interviewer, but or as a podcast host, it's like you kind of almost have to see the structure of the conversation before you even have it. So like learning how like that works, and like learning, just my communication skills have gotten so much better, and learning like the structure. I never really thought of a conversation of having like structure, but almost like learning how to put structure to a conversation, I think has been like one of my biggest growth things within being an interviewer.
Yeah, for me, I mean, we never met before. It's our first time talking, but you can probably already gather, like, I like to talk. I'm a chatty, energetic person. And I think the biggest challenge for me was like, you have to structure the conversation. You can't just like chat. Like, there are time limits, there's constraints. And then also I have a tendency to go off on tangents. I mean, we've done it a few times, right? So to go off on a tangent, but then you need to be able to bring, and I call it bringing the boat back to the dock, or the bus back to the station, like find a way to bring it back, because next thing you know, like I'll be talking about something, and I struggle with this in my normal personal life, but I like just talk. And then it's like, what were we even talking about? Like, how did we get on this topic?
Yeah. ADHD. I don't know if you have ADHD, but I've never been diagnosed by a professional, but all the signs and stuff. Yeah, I have massive ADHD.
Yeah, I do. I've also never been like officially diagnosed, but I've been unofficially diagnosed. Yeah. I think I'm very good at focusing on things I want to focus on, but sometimes my brain just like runs with it. Yeah,
that's why I didn't do that. That's why I didn't do that well in school, because the subjects that I wasn't interested in, oh my gosh, it's hard to focus. It's hard to focus on something it sounds like both of us, it's hard to focus on something that you're not truly fully invested in and you're interested in. If it's like this math equation, especially if it's like in stats, it's like, how am I going to apply that into like running a bit? Like, why do I even need to learn this? Like, this
I'm
isn't going to
horrible
help
at
me with the,
math.
yeah.
Or absolutely like math. And then also I struggle with this in my daily life when it comes to like stuff around the house. Like I'm a horrible cook. I hate to cook and I hate to clean. So like I don't pay attention. I'll be
Yep.
like yesterday, for example, I listened to a lot of scripted podcasts where the sound is coming from around you. It's like Dolby Atmos. And it's like,
Hmm.
and I'm cooking and like things are burning and like beeps are going off. And I'm like, and then like he was murdered. And it's like, oh,
I'm so
like,
invested.
yeah. Like I'm not paying attention. So
Yeah.
I totally get that. But what I like about podcasting is like I am really focused when I do this because I don't have any distractions. And
Yes.
obviously we're using video and like I can't be like on my phone. I can't be like checking doing other
Right.
things. Like I'm only and I feel the way about bringing it back to the gym too. The classes that I do at the gym, like obviously you can't be like doing other stuff like that. You're working with the trainer, with the coach, with the teacher, whatever. And yeah, you
And
have to be focused.
I think that's why I enjoy things like working out or podcasting or, solo things like that, because it does give me time to, yes, we're talking, in a conversation right now, but it does give me like almost like some, it helps me with my mental again. It's being able to do something and focus on one thing at a time versus like thinking about like the rest of the day. When we're done with this conversation, I'm like, okay, what's next in my calendar? Because I'm a very calendarized, organized person for every day. Because my life would fall apart without my calendar. But it goes right back to me like stressing about what the next thing is. What do I got to get done today? What am I going to have enough time? Oh my gosh, what time is it? Like it's just like all day, every day. And when I'm at the gym, I don't stress about it. When I'm in the middle of an interview, I could care less what time it is. So yeah, it's definitely it helps. It's another thing that helps me, I guess, with the ADHD and my mental clarity is like having things that you can set time apart to solely focus on that. Or meditation. I'm a huge component of meditation too. It does the same
Me
thing.
too. I have
Yeah.
anxiety on top of like all these other things. So it's
Yeah.
like I'm always
Yeah.
thinking about thinking about the future, thinking about what's next. And
Hmm.
like, if you're at the gym and especially in a class with a teacher, like what use does it make if I'm stressing about something that I have to do for work after? Like I can't do
Yeah.
anything about it now. My phone's in the locker. Like all my stuff is like closed in the
Do you
locker, my
ever
bike key.
do you ever take days of like unplugging from social media or anything, like completely off your phone? I
I
take every
did.
Sunday
Oh
and just
wow.
no social media. Yeah.
That's a good idea. I
Yeah.
did not to make things depressing. My dog died in
Oh,
December.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
not to like
sad.
bring it down, but yeah, and I took like 2 weeks off of around 2 weeks off of social
Mm.
media, including Drop Base Not Bombs, like including Hardstyle Mag. Like obviously I still did the stuff that I needed to do outside of that. The podcast was on a break anyway because I was in the process of hiring somebody
Got it.
to get the podcast on YouTube and things like that. But I did take 2 weeks, and you have so much more time when you're not on your phone.
Hmm.
There's so many things out there in the world, and you can feel your feelings more, and that's what I wanted. Obviously,
Yeah.
she was my first dog and she was my best friend, and it that's cliche, but in my case it was true. She actually
Hmm.
was.
Hmm.
And taking the time to feel those feelings, because when you're on your phone it's just a distraction, and we can say it's work because it is work, but it's still a distraction, you
Well,
know.
and even if it is work, you need time off of work. You need balance in your life. That's something that I've gotten better at over the last couple of years. When I first started the podcast, balance was, I didn't even know what balance was. Like, what is that? What do I need to balance? And then now it's like, okay, now I need to like, or the other thing that I do, like a lot of days, I'll shut off my computer by like 10 o'clock. I usually go to bed around midnight, 1 o'clock. So just a couple hours at the end of the day to like unwind, don't be working, let your brain settle down before you go to bed is another thing that I try and do too.
So how do you find, okay, so you mentioned those things. So how do you find the
Yeah.
balance between podcasts, and so we'll get to it in a second, but you have a company as well, you have a management
Yeah.
company. Do you have another job too, or is it just the podcast and
Like side hustles. Yeah, those
side
are my main
hustles?
focuses.
Okay.
But yeah, side
So
hustles.
how do
Yeah.
you balance all those things? What does a typical day look like for you? How do you schedule
Uh,
all these things? Because I also have issues.
yeah. I have certain times throughout the week that are like pretty consistent, unless I go out of town or something that things change. But like Monday through Wednesday are like my podcast days, or management days. It's just like my at home work days. And then like weekends, I usually pick up like an odd job, or I'll do DoorDash, or I'll do something. And yeah, so it's like I would have a few days a week that I work completely not on the podcast, unless I have like some form of like I have to make like a clip, or I have to make finish something from the 3 days that I set time apart to specifically work on that. But what I try and do is set like 3 days a week up on just the podcast management, like stuff like that, music stuff, and then I have 4 days a week of like outside work. So that's kind of usually how I try and balance things. But then obviously there's crossover, there's things that pop up, there's things that you have to shift around, or this interview, they have to set time apart for that. So it's constantly shifting and moving, but that's generally how I try and structure my week.
Yeah, and then also dealing with other people's schedules too, because
Yes.
booking
Yep.
guests, and then you manage artists, right? So how do you
Yep.
manage their schedules and your own schedule?
Yeah, so I mean, all the guys, that's still fairly new. So all the guys that I'm working with right now, we're still working on like getting their brands together and stuff like that. So it's a lot of like that kind of work, but it's just setting half a day apart, or a full day of like, okay, I have this much work to do on the management stuff. Let's take all day and try and get all of this done. And then I'll have 2 days a week to work on the podcast. So it's kind of just, yeah, however much work I have to do, however much time I allow myself to get that done. But yeah, I'm definitely like, I try and keep myself on like, okay, this activity is only going to take 2 hours, so let's try our best to get it done in 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes things like get deep into something or get pulled into something else.
Yeah.
I'm also balancing a lot of things at the same time. So sometimes I get dragged into something else. Like I work full time from home, so I'm a consultant in my day job, and then
Got it.
I have the podcast, and I'm the chief editor of Hardstyle Mag, and then I also MC, and I do a lot of different things, and it's all from me at home. So it's like I start doing one thing, and then it's like then it goes I have to do Instagram Live, then go to the interview. I'm working on an audit for someone. I'm like, consulting this person. I'm writing an article, and then it's like out the door to go MC. And it's just like,
it's
hard
really
to,
just, and that's why I said my life would fall apart without a calendar. It's really just at the end of every week, every Sunday night, I sit and I'm like, okay, what do I need to get done for this week? What do I have coming up? And obviously when that stuff pops up, it's already in my calendar. So I just schedule around whatever that is. But I try and sit down at least one time a week and just be like, okay, let's get a general idea of what each day is going to look like, what the next 7 days is going to look like. If things move and shift, obviously that's fine. But yeah, calendar, until I started using a calendar, there's no way I would be able to balance as much as I do if it wasn't for my calendar.
Yeah, I have multiple synced calendars, and then like to-do lists, and then like daily lists, and then I have like smaller post-it note. Like I have like a big list, and then that goes like more down, and then I have a whiteboard for the podcast. Like I have different things for different. Otherwise, it's like gets confusing. If you were to look at my list, like what are you doing? Like there's so many random things.
Yeah, use your tools that you have at your disposal, because a lot of people don't even scratch the surface on using the tools that I mean, it's on your phone. All the stuff that I run my whole life on my phone or my computer, like it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's all connected, and even on my watch, my appointments pop up. Like you should never not miss anything.
Yep.
So talking about your company, about Underground Society Management, how did you decide to start this? Why? Do you have a background in managing artists, or?
I don't. I do have like some of a background in managing a company outside of the podcast, but I used to manage a couple of gyms back when I was competing. But as far as that, it was just something that I wanted to. It is my end goal for my career. Like the podcast is just kind of like a networking tool and like a promotion tool that I'm going to be using for my larger, for the Underground Society Management. I'm going to be. I don't know if you know what Icon Collective is. It's a school.
I think I heard about it from I think I heard on your podcast.
Yeah. So like Nightmare, Slander, who else? But Black Gummy and Techno Space. There's been so many people, Sunburn, so many people that came out of there. It's a music production school. In the last couple of years, they started a music business program. And hopefully once I've hit some financial hardship the last couple of years, so I'm trying to get myself out of that. But once I'm back on track, I'm going to be going to that school down in Los Angeles for their music business program. But it is always, management has always been like my end goal. That was always like when I first started, like, I saw a need for like a radio station and stuff like that. But even back then, my original thought of wanting to be in the music industry was to be an artist manager. That's always been like key. And the reason for that was I love business, and again, my parents are both entrepreneurs. I grew up around it. I just love the idea of business and like how businesses work, and that gave me an opportunity to flex that muscle. But then also, I'm very, as if you listen to my podcast, I'm very big on like self-development, self-growth, mental health, that kind of stuff. So I know there's a need there for managers to help their clients with that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of combining both of the worlds that I'm very passionate about. If it wasn't for the music stuff, I'd probably get my degree in psychology, and I'd probably become a therapist. Yeah. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So it's like not only is the music stuff fun, but it also allows me to flex both muscles of A, wanting to run a business, and also B, wanting to help people with like mental health type stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of overlap for you with that. And that's
yeah,
interesting too that you decided to, because you're an entrepreneur, to start your own company rather than,
yeah.
taking an internship at a management company or
And
taking an internship at a label or something like that.
if that does happen someday, that'd be awesome. But I mean, I would still love to take care of the guys that I'm currently working with if they're still in the scene. So we'll see what the future. But I am still definitely open to, like, if I got an opportunity to work for like a coursing agency or like something like that, I would love to take a job like that. Because also when you work for an agency like that, like you have a little bit more of like security too, because they're, you're getting a salary instead of just relying on what you're making from your artist, which until that gets built up, like it's hard to, as you know, it's hard to make money in the music industry. So
Yep. Yep. Definitely. So, can you talk a little bit about the artists that you manage now? You don't need to say their names if you don't
yeah,
want to, but how did you go about finding them? What genre are they in? How do you go about getting
main
them bookings, etc.?
mainly all dubstep guys. I guess because kind of there's very, at least in my area, there's very few people that produce anything other than that. But one is my roommate, also edited this podcast. Shout out Johnny, aka Anubis. He, I just picked we were roommates and he needed help with his artist project. So I was like, dude, I'd love to help you out. And he was kind of like my first like kind of test trial person that, and we've definitely, it's again, it's still fairly new in the last few months, but we've gotten him an out of state show. We're getting him hopefully some press for his next release and stuff. So we're doing stuff like that. I'm learning along the process too still. But and then off of that, some of the other people that are in our area that he's played shows with, or just other people in the community that I know that I saw that were really talented. I was like, hey, I'd love to help you guys out too. And I'm only helping, I think, 3 guys right now because I don't want to overload myself. But it's just an opportunity because they're at a point in their career where they're starting to need some help, and I'm also in the point in my career where I want to learn how to help people better. So it's kind of like a learning experience, and they're kind of giving me as much of an opportunity as I'm giving them. So it's kind of like a trade work type of situation. Yeah.
Nice. And all comes back full circle to helping
Yeah.
people and
Yep.
personal
Yep.
development. Nice. So looking overall, everything that you've done in the scene, what are some highlights and lowlights for you?
Oh man. Honestly, the podcast and like how far that's come, that's been such a highlight. I love showing up every week and talking to new people. Lowlights, hmm. The financial, I guess the financial part that comes along with it, with investing into a project and taking a risk financially of, potentially my car had some issues too, and I had just finished investing. I think it was like 10 or 11. How much was it? It might have been like 15,000 podcast with. I've taken courses and stuff how to become better interviewer and stuff. So like I have everything combined with my gear and everything. It was just financially. I think it's been the biggest challenge for me is just financially. Just because if something comes up, and life happens and accidents happen, or emergencies happen, and if you take a risk like that, sometimes it can put you in a hole. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and it's just part of the process, part of my journey. But that I think that was one of the low lights. But yeah, highlights is starting this podcast, and really taking a risk on myself. And I guess the risk factor is as much of a downside as it is a positive, because I know as long as I stick with it, it's gonna, right, the fruits of my labor will eventually come. But it is a big risk financially. So kind of the good with the bad there.
Yeah, it's a bit, podcasting is it can be a big investment. Like people don't
Yeah.
realize it. I think going back to what I was asking before, one thing that you didn't know before, I guess one thing that I didn't know is that it's
Yeah.
like going to
The
cost any
investment.
money. Yeah. Like you
Yep.
just think like, oh yeah, just talk, but it's like, no, you have like the equipment and then you need to pay like for SoundCloud Pro. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to say how
All your
much things
hosting
are, but
fees.
oh yeah, exactly. There,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
All your
Yep.
hosting fees, like Zoom Pro costs
Yep.
money, like lights, mic, headphones. Then if you have Ableton or whatever, or if you hire somebody,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like all.
Which I hired my roommate to do the sound editing, so I have to pay that bill every month too, which isn't super expensive, but that's a couple of $100 extra a month. And also just take in this too. I took like $8,000 in courses of how to become a better interviewer. So that was an investment in itself.
Yeah, everything costs money and everything's more
Yeah,
expensive now, but it's definitely worth it. It's worth the investment,
yeah,
and yeah, we just have to keep it up. And one day
definitely.
EDM is going to be mainstream, and
But
we'll
I
be
mean,
set.
even with an artist project, it's the same thing. You have to, like you said, in Ableton or in their mics or any of their beat pads or any of their stuff too. Like any project in the EDM industry is gonna cost money.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So we're coming towards the end now. I just
Yeah.
have a few more questions. I want to dive a little bit deeper. You're really open on your podcast and on social
Hmm.
media about the importance of faith in your life. And this is really interesting to me because I was actually raised Catholic and now I'm more of a spiritual person, I would say, but
Hmm.
religion played a big role in my life growing up. And what role does religion play in your life?
Yeah, it's my driving force. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God and my relationship with Jesus. So yeah, and I know it's probably more of an unpopular thing to say within our industry, but I think I start every day with meditation, and I'm very spiritual as well, and I'm again back to self growth stuff, but I do a morning routine of meditating, doing writing my gratitude journal, and then of course praying and asking God to bless my day and thanking Him for all the wonderful things He does and brings into my life already. Pray for my family, pray all that kind of stuff. I read daily devotionals. I've read the Bible. Yeah, it's a huge thing. It's the core of who I am.
I think that's awesome. And yeah, like you said, it's not necessarily popular in our scene.
Hmm.
I feel like spirituality is becoming more popular. I
Yeah.
had Emma Capotis on my podcast. We were both talking about how, we're both very spiritual, all about meditation and yoga
Hmm.
and trusting the universe. You can see in my background, I have like a bunch of crystals and things like that. And I do
I
feel
think
like there is
I
overlap
think
there.
there's definitely over. I was about to just say that. I think there's as much work as you can do in like this, just the spiritual route of meditation, crystals, stuff like that. Like, I think there's just as much value there as your relationship with a higher power. So, I definitely think that, and I definitely practice both to a certain degree. So
Yeah,
there's
I
definitely a lot
feel
of
that way too. Like I
crossover.
wouldn't say like I say I grew up Catholic in a very very
Hmm.
Catholic household, and
I was an altar
um
boy and I was confirmed. My dad's Catholic, my mom's non-denominational, so I grew up knowing the Catholic religion very well.
very well. Yeah, yeah. It can.
Yeah.
There were definitely some benefits to it, and there were definitely
Hmm.
some drawbacks to it.
Hmm.
I'll say that, but I think one thing that it did teach me is to believe in a higher power for sure.
Yep.
That there is something greater than myself, definitely. And I did learn a lot of good lessons from there. But yeah, it can be yeah, the Catholic Church can be a tough can be a tough place, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
there's some
I don't even
challenges.
I don't necessarily even practice like a specific, I don't really even go to church. It's my own relationship. And I think that's the important piece for people to realize. It's like there's a lot of things at the Christian church I just don't agree with. Especially, talking, and it's definitely gotten better, but like even like the LGBTQ stuff, like that's a sin to Christians. And I personally don't believe that. Like there's certain things just that I'm just like, that doesn't even make sense. Like Jesus wanted us to love everyone as like love, love thy neighbor. Like no matter what they are, what they do, like it's your responsibility to love everyone, not to cast judgment on something that on someone who is choosing to lose or is choosing to live their life a different way than you're choosing. So there's definitely, and I don't practice a necessary religion. It's just my relationship with the higher power, with God and Jesus. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And that's what it's all about, just being a good person, like being the
Yep.
best person you can be, being nice to other people, like, yeah, and not judging people. I've just encountered a lot of people in my life who are really judgmental and judgmental of others, that cast judgment on people for the way they lived or about who they
Hmm.
were. And it's just like, there's no reason for that. We should just be nice to everybody, be a good
Yeah.
person, mind your own business, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that someone else's actions really affecting my day-to-day life other than the fact that like I know that they're choosing to live their life differently? Absolutely not. So why the hell should I cast a judgment on them? Like that's not for me to judge, that's for God to judge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So do you ever so we talked about how, maybe being religious is not super popular when it comes to like the EDM
Hmm.
scene. Do you ever feel pushback from people in the rave scene or vice versa, people in the religious community who, well, you said you're someone from
More
your
so in the,
church brought you to rave, so yeah.
yeah, yeah, more, yeah, yes, but also more so from the religious side of things, and like my family who's religious and stuff, they're still like kind of skeptical, I guess you could say. They don't really like say much out loud. They maybe here and there, but I definitely I've the EDM industry is so open to so many different views and like love everyone. I think that's like what I was attracted to most, in like the community aspect of the rave industry or rave community or whatever. But I think, yeah, I get more judgment from like the religious people than I do like the EDM people. But I don't go to church, and that's my own, like I have my own type of religion, I guess, or spiritual practice with that. So even with that, like it's mainly just like honestly my family, I think. Like, and it's not even really like that bad. It's just like they just ask questions that kind of go in depth of like questioning my morals when it comes to what I want to do. So, which I'm grateful for. I'm glad they're looking. I know it's coming from a loving place. So, other than that, I don't think I've really gotten judged. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, that's good. And that's the way it should be. Like the rave
Yeah.
scene should be open and welcoming to everybody. And that's for the most part what I've experienced in all aspects of my life. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to society, the rave scene gets such a bad stigma. It just gets a
Hmm.
bad rap of being about, drugs and naughty behavior and hedonism.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
that's I want to be that shining light for people to be like, okay, he is a Christian and he is very open about his faith, and he's also doing he's also in this industry. So it's like it's not all bad. So I almost kind of, to a certain degree, I kind of want to like take pride in like being like one of the lights of like, yeah, okay, there are good people. It's not all like drugs and alcohol and sex all the time. Like there is good people. People actually go to this because they like the music. Like so
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest parts of my podcast too, of Drop Bass Not Bombs in general, is raving for a cause and showing that you
hmm
can bring together human rights and charity and mental health and all these things. And raves, it's not just about partying, it's not just about
hmm
having fun, it's not just a normal night out. There's way
no,
more deeper things
it's a
happening.
lifestyle
And
too
yeah,
to a lot
yeah,
of people. Yeah. I
definitely.
mean, if the judgment, as the projects continue to grow, as I begin, build a bigger name for myself in the industry and stuff like that, if the judgment comes, so be it. I have pretty thick skin, and I'm not gonna again, back to me, my own religion, and me having my own relationship with God. That's only God can judge me. God can only judge someone else, and God can only judge me. So whatever people have to say about it, like, so be it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna affect me.
Good. Yeah. And as
Yeah.
you put yourself out there more and as your platform begins to grow, like it's inevitable that people are going to
Yeah.
not like it,
Yep.
and that's on them. Whatever. Keep doing what you're doing.
A sign of people talking negatively about you, or get, sending you hate or whatever, that's only a sign of success in my opinion. So
You're
let
doing
them be.
something right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we're really coming to the end now. This is the question that I ask all my guests. How do you rave for a cause or party for a purpose in your life?
Yeah. I think it's just wanting to help people become better versions of themselves, and using the EDM industry and my platform as a tool to be able to do that. And not only with spiritual but also just mental well-being. You're asking me a lot about like physical fitness and stuff. Like I think all of that's important to become successful, and I want to be able to provide a platform to show people the ways of how to get through certain challenges and struggles. And just, yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, just helping people become better versions of themselves and become and reach the success that all of us want to reach someday within music. So yeah, I guess that's my cause.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And I see you doing that with your podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm sure doing it too with your agency, and it's only going to grow from here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love what I do. So I'm very grateful and I feel very fortunate that I'm able to, even with all the struggles that I've gone through, personally, I feel very fortunate that this is my life.
And to find that out at a young age too,
Yeah.
that like you found out what you wanted to do, and
Yep.
because it takes people a long time, and some people never find out what they want to do, and some people hate forever their work or hate
Mm-hmm.
what they do. So to have
Mm-hmm.
found that at a young age, and to be sticking with it is
And
great.
to follow that up to something that my parents always ingrained in me at a young age, both my parents, so that again, they're being entrepreneurs themselves. They're just like, figure out something that you love to do and figure out how to make money at it. That's all we want to see you achieve in life. Figure out what you want to do and figure out how to make money at it. That's it. So
That's good life
yeah,
advice for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So Justin, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Where can people connect with you online?
Yeah, first I'm gonna push our YouTube Underground Society Podcast, and then all socials. Instagram is undergroundsociety.edm. Twitter is UGS pod_EDM. TikTok is also UGS pod_EDM. And then just our website is www.undergroundsocietypodcast.com. You can find all of our other information out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for today. Everybody go and check all those out. I'll put the links in the description, in the bio, so everyone can connect with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye.
You too.
So that was my episode with Justin McGary. I hope you guys liked that one as much as I did. It was so cool connecting with him. I discovered his podcast not that long ago, and I really love his passion. And yeah, I'm all about entrepreneurship in the EDM scene. So check out his website, check out his podcast. I put all the links down in the description. So you guys might have noticed, but I'm not in my office. I'm not in my home studio. I'm actually in Miami at the time of recording this for Miami Music Week and for Ultra. I'll be doing a full review about Ultra in the next episode on April 21st, so stay tuned for that. Also wanted to let you guys know, a few weeks ago, I went to Project Uptempo in The Hague. It was Trespass Birthday Bash. It was so much fun. I did this full article, full review with probably about like 8 interviews with some of the biggest artists in the uptempo scene. So you can go ahead and check that out by going to hardstylemag.com. Next up on my agenda is Rebirth Festival. So I'll be there on Friday. I'll be there with a very special guest. I can't say who yet, but if you guys are going, please hit me up. I hope to meet you guys there. And then after that, I'm celebrating King's Day in The Hague at King's World. And then it's festival season. So it's going to be crazy. Don't forget to follow me on MC Unicorn Official. I'll be making content all these places, writing for Hardstyle Mag. So a couple more announcements for today. Next one is I've recently partnered with a new amazing organization called Shroom Beach. I'll be showing you some of their outfits later on because I'm wearing them at Ultra. You can use code MCUnicorn20 to save some money, and 10% of their proceeds go to the Psychedelic Institute. So they're all about researching about psychedelics and the medicinal purposes of them, and they make really cool, trippy, psychedelic beach and rave wear. So definitely everybody go and check that out. And lastly, as you guys know, I'm partnering once again with Drop Zone Festival. Drop Zone Festival is the ultimate hardstyle holiday in Croatia. I'm happy to announce I have a discount code now for you guys. So I'm just going to read it here because it's long. It's DZDUCQ. So that's D as in dog, Z as in zebra, D as in dog, U as in umbrella, C as in cat, Q as in queen. So enter that code, DZDUCQ. Check out dropzonefest.com. You can save some money on tickets and accommodations, and let's party in Croatia this summer. So I'm keeping it super brief today, guys. Like I said, I'm about to go to Ultra, yay! So check everything out on Instagram. If you like the podcast, leave a thumbs up, give me 5 stars, and yeah, I'll see you on April 21st. Bye!